Hello, everyone. Welcome to Clarity 16.0.1 Supportability Training. My name is Dave Sprague, and we are going to be covering the timesheet updates in this section. So, what's new? So, there's two areas I want to cover today. One is related to field level security. The time entry attributes can now be secured using the field level security that's been rolling out over the past several releases. As part of that, the administrative users have the ability to relabel or rename time entry attributes. In addition, there was some work done to correct some inconsistencies between standard and or resource calendars and the way they presented data in both the modern and classic UX in terms of timesheets, and specifically looking at non-working days, resource availability within the effort and project time gauges. Those are solely for the modern UX, and then transitioning between hours and days. So why is this important? Well, field level security for the timesheet area was or is a feature request that came out of the customer innovation program. So we've taken that up and delivered that in this release. And again, that helps with driving adoption. These administrators require these flexible tools to secure selected timesheet details and provide end users with the right information with company specific naming conventions at the right time. Moving on to the issue we addressed regarding data consistency, that again is also something that will help drive adoption. When customers are comfortable, users are comfortable with information that they may be seeing today in a classic timesheet, and as they consider transitioning to the modern UX and in particular timesheets, they want to make sure that that data is going to be the same no matter which area they come in from. So what's changed? So as I mentioned, field level security from a time entry standpoint, we've got it so there's roughly 5 attributes that can be changed in terms of input type code, charge code, role, user value 1 and user value 2. The administrator grants or revokes edit or view access at the group level, and this is consistent with all other attributes that are coming under field levels of control. And then one of the key things here is that there's now a very straightforward way to modify or change the field names for user value 1 and user value 2 that means something to the organization. So as you can see here in the upper part of the screen is the administrative area to perform that security and grant access in terms of view or edit. And the bottom example is really just the end user experience with visual cues that something like a charge code is under field level security control. You can see the field level security badge in place. Moving on to the next portion of field level security is really all about renaming or relabeling the out of the box fields. And again, I'm focusing here on user value 1 and 2 to make them, because those are fields that customers would like to use, but as they stand without any change, they're kind of hard to educate users on what they actually mean. So we've got examples of the naming conventions and then the edit versus view only rights that are applicable to users. So for example, the upper screen, user 1, they see that user value 1 has actually been renamed to expense category, and they do have edit access to the group. And then user value 2 has a different set of fields that they have access to in the timesheet, 2 of which are not editable because they've only been granted view access. And then the middle item there is editable. So you've got that flexibility in timesheets now as well, just like you become familiar with how field level security is rolling out to all parts of the application. All right, so here's an example of changing the values, right? So obviously we've been focusing on user value 1, but the name has been relabeled to expense category. It's visible in the timesheet itself, and it's also, that same change is also visible in the column configuration panel if that capability has been enabled for your users. While you're in the column panel, you can also see that there's a shield representing also that those fields are under field level security control. All right, let's switch gears from field level security and move on to the data consistency issue that we resolved for presenting resource availability in terms of hours and days, and actual work logged or work recorded in terms of hours and days. So here's an example. The effort gauge that's on the left side of these gauges, there's an effort gauge and a project time gauge. So the effort gauge is, in this example, is representing that a user has 20 hours of work. They've basically got Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as non-working days. And so their particular schedule affords them working Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday is really just a half day. So that results in, assuming an 8-hour day, 20 hours of total availability, and that's represented in the effort gauge. You can see the math there is 20 divided by 8 equates to 2.5 days, which is also represented in the bottom visual here, where that we're showing that in days. So moving on from availability to the actual work time recorded. Same schedule, this person has 20 hours, but in this case, we're starting to see that they've recorded 19.5 hours of work across their timesheet, which equates to 2.44 days. So I just want to point out those are some of the fundamentals that are associated with the effort gauge in terms of actual work time in hours and days, and compared to availability in terms of hours and days. So here's a comparison of that shows that Classic and the Modern UX are both reflecting those changes. So we're here looking at an hours example. 19.5 hours has been recorded. You can see it in the effort gauge itself. You can see it in the timesheet grid itself in the upper view of the Modern UX perspective. And then also that user that operates in the Classic experience would see the same thing. Obviously the layout's a little bit different, but you can see the 19.5 hours is showing there, and the data is consistent. So here we're looking at it in terms of hours. We're also looking at it here in terms of days. So the effort gauge switches to days at 2.44, showing the total total days recorded. You see that in both the effort gauge and in the grid in the Modern UX. And then, of course, in the bottom view is the Classic timesheet in days, and as you would expect, that is also showing the same calculation there in terms of days. So let's switch to the demo. I'm going to show you actually in the product here the use of time entry, field level security, and then we'll go through those scenarios that we just did as far as the data being consistently represented in both Modern and Classic. So let's go there right now. I'll get out of PowerPoint and we'll bring this up. We'll come to the product and we should see a project's tiles here. Go full screen. And I'm going to go into, as an administrator, I'm going to go to the administration area and go to attributes where all of the field level security is managed. And I'm landing on my time entry view that I created. You can see the object that I selected to filter on is time entry, as opposed to any other object that's available to me. And so that gives me the total listing of attributes that are available under this object. So you can see there's 5 checkboxes here 5 items that are checked to indicate that they are in fact secure. So these are the items that were most requested to be secured as part of our customer innovation program. So we've responded with that. Some of the other items that if they are secured, there are obviously some calculations that occur off of that, and so they actually cannot be secured. So this represents a universe of securable items. You can see there's several groups that have assigned edit access for these and or a view access. You'll also notice that there's one item down here at the bottom, user value 2 has been checked. No access groups have been provided, which means that this item is basically suppressed from the modern UX altogether. I do want to draw your attention to the expense category. Notice the label field has been added to the grid. And when you use this column, and you can actually, this is where you rename or relabel the default attribute. So we've just taken user value 1 and are now referring to it as expense category. Okay, so that is basically how the administrative side of things occur. So let's take a look at how this actually works in the system. Okay, I'm going to stay logged in as Ian, and I'm going to come over to my timesheet, and I've got a few tasks that are set up for me. Right off the bat, you can see the charge code, input type code, role are all secured. The icon, the shield indicates that, right? As I come into the charge code field, you can see that's editable. This is also an input type code. I've also been given edit access here as well, so I could change that as needed. And role, since I've only been given view access, that cannot be changed. So those are the two examples of view versus edit access. If I come over here to the column the column panel, I'll see this has been configured, right, for me as a user to kind of manage how I want to view my timesheet. But I can see the different, the shields here are representing those same exact information that I see in the grid. So that's one user's perspective, how you look at field level security. I'm going to log out and come back in. And Rob will have a different perspective. So I landed on the home page here. I'm going to come over to timesheets. And he's got obviously a different set of tasks that he's been assigned to for this particular period. He's got some data that's already being entered in. But the thing I wanted to draw your attention to is up above here, the charge code, input type code, and role are the same kind of access is provided to Rob that Ian had. This is an editable field. That is, this role is not. But he has an additional field here called the expense category, which is an editable field. Now, if you recall, this was relabeled from user value 1, which is the default out of the box label. So now it actually is something more meaningful. And in addition, as I come over to the column panel, I can also see the added entry here for expense category, which was renamed from user value 1. And of course, these shields again all represent the fields that are under field level security control. Okay, so that concludes the demo of the time entry field level security. And now we're going to switch gears and move over to talk about some of the data consistency areas that we addressed as well with respect to calendaring and days versus hours. Okay, so I'm still logged in as Ian Arpel with his timesheet in view for the current period. I want to draw your attention to the resource availability and logged hours on the effort gauge at the top of the page, as opposed and the project time gauge. Now, these particular tasks are dedicated or for projects only, so that's why you're seeing 100% allocation, and that's not going to change for this little section of the demo. But I want to draw your attention to the effort gauge up at the top. So in the timesheet, you can see the work days are defined. They're lighter shaded. Non-working days are, kind of grayed out. Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday represent these non-working days. You'll see the 20 hours here in the effort gauge represents total availability. So one thing I want to show you is this person's calendar, and I'll come over to get to Ian Harpel's calendar. And I just want to show that he, in fact, has, Thursday, Friday are dedicated as non-working days, in addition to Saturday, Sunday, weekends. Monday, Tuesday are weekdays, but when are our work days. But Wednesday, I just want to show you that he's only got 4 hours allocated for that day. So that's where our 20 hours comes from in total. I'll navigate back to the Modern UX timesheet. And so I just want to give you a reference point for the 20. And the 680 is just obviously the total hours that have been accumulated so far in this timesheet. All right, so from here, what I want to do is I want to show you the classic timesheet and show you how it represents this 680. So I've just got one here. I'm just got the 2 tasks that are here. You can see the 680 as the total hours recorded so far for Ian. So classic matches modern, as you would expect, right? Okay, so let's switch from hours to days. So I'm just going to do an administrative function here and come over to timesheet options, and right here switch to days, and I'll hit save. I'm going to return to the Modern UX, and I need to refresh so it catches up with that underlying setting. So I'm an end user logging in, and here I am in days. You see the effort gauge has switched. The calculations are changing. Availability is no longer 20 hours, but it's 2.5 days, right? Monday, Tuesday, and then a half-day shift for Wednesday. And now days are reflected here in terms of, 0.25, 0.25, 2.7, right? So you end up with a total of 0.85. I'm going to go ahead and put 1 day total in there, and just on purpose to max out to show you the calculation. It's accumulating 2.85 days of work recorded and against an availability of 2.5. So that's on purpose, just for purpose of the example. So I'm going to go to classic, and I'm going to have to refresh to also let it catch up to the day setting and then the new time entry that I've just done. And you can see the days off are all reflected here. And I've, there's, by example, there's the extra time that was allocated, and the 2.85 hours is recorded in Classic. So at the end of the day, and I just want to show off the fact that days versus hours is properly reflected between Modern and Classic. And this individual resource calendar availability is also properly reflected between Modern and Classic. So that concludes the demo of the of addressing the data consistency issues between Classic and Modern. And that also finishes up the field level security demo that we just did a moment ago. So with that concludes the timesheet update section, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.